Hey, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the July Product Spotlight. I'm Paul. I'm Pinpoint's head of customer success. I'm joined today by a couple of colleagues that you've seen before. I've got Dave, who's our head of AI and innovation, and also Ed, who is a senior product manager here at Pinpoint. Each month, we host one of these sessions to walk you through what's new in Pinpoint. We'll share a few tips to help you get the most value from the product. And sometimes we'll even give you a little sneak preview as what's coming soon. Let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to hand things over to Dave to walk us through our newest feature that just got launched just a few days ago. So Dave, take it away.
Cool, thanks for that, Paul. So kicking off, got three things from my side. One is a completely new piece of functionality called intake notes or hiring intake notes. So as you guys would have heard in some of the other webinars and also some of our posts on LinkedIn, we're doing a lot more around AI. One part of that is how can we get better intelligence and better context for helping you guys actually potentially start looking at rediscovering talent that sits in your pipeline and also understand the nuances of the job that you're looking to hire for. So we've got a new feature, and once it's toggled on, it is under a permission as well. So people will have permissions for viewing intake notes as well as creating. And then you will see intake notes under jobs. You can go and create a new intake note. So if I just call this webinar, and this will then take you through to a completely new screen that none of you guys will have seen before. So we've got a couple of options here. You can either copy and paste. Let's say that you have a hiring intake meeting already, it's offline, or it's a document that you guys work on asynchronously between the recruiter and the hiring manager. You can just copy and paste the contents of that into this text box, or you can actually just go and add a file and upload these formats of files, PDFs and Word docs and markdown files, and that will then import all the contents as an intake note. Another nice bit of functionality we have added is the ability to actually set up basically intake meetings. So this would typically be a recruiter and a hiring manager. It may be a couple of people if there's a few decision makers looking at the candidates. And you can either just use an existing meeting, so you're like, oh, damn, look, guys, can we quickly jump on and start talking about this new role? And you can use an existing meeting that you may have already been on in Google Teams and Zoom. And all you've got to do is just paste the link of that current meeting, just state who the host is for that meeting, which user. Meeting time's optional, but you can just go add meeting. And then whilst you're in that meeting, give it a couple of minutes, and we will actually bring in an AI note taker for you that will transcribe the rest of that meeting and take the transcription, summarize it, and pre-populate the intake notes for you. Or more traditionally, you can also go and say, right, I want to schedule a hiring intake meeting in a couple of days, and these are going to be my hiring teams, as well as potentially an external recruiter you may want to bring in. You can bring in external parties. You just go and choose what the conferencing provider is and who the actual host is. That will then, much like an interview, go and set up an invite, set up a calendar event. And when you guys join that, there will be an AI note taker that you can choose to let in or dismiss. We are also going to be working on some added functionality where, as a company admin, you can choose whether this meeting functionality exists at all or not, or whether you just want to not have the AI note taker, but you still like the functionality of scheduling meetings. So that will be coming in a few weeks, but intake notes is already in release. So once you've done that and you've got your test intake note, apologies for lack of inspiration, you can now here go and link it to a job, or if you use requisitions, you can also link it to a requisition. Without linking it, you can still go and create intake notes, but you can actually go into a job. And if I go onto a random job I have in my test account, and I go to intake notes, I can either from here now go and create a new one. I can go and copy an existing one, and then any changes I make to it will just be specific to this job. Or I can go and link an existing intake note already. As you saw, we had the webinar one. I can go link intake notes, and it will then appear here. I should have saved my intake note before because you would have seen the content. So as well as just being a really nice way to bring intake notes and kind of hiring briefs into the ATS and not having these living as separate artifacts, this provides massively important context going forward to our Copilot, which is Pinpoint's Copilot. It's our agent that we have living across the platform. So if I did an intake note, and I'm going to just show you what we now move on to, which is job description generation. If I now go into let me create a new job, but let's say that I had a hiring intake note already just created on a new job. And if I scroll down to the description, I can now actually click on this button, draft with Copilot. It's going to come back, ask me a few questions about this job. It's just checking my memories. I'm going to say, I want a junior product manager similar to the senior product PM in terms of skills, but more junior. This will take a couple of seconds. This is always the joys of demoing AI live. We just have to wait for the LLM to actually go and work through it. So it's taking a little second because what you're going to see now is if you click draft with Copilot on the top of the description, it will actually give me a draft of all three sections that I have here. It will take whatever you've called these section headers and retain those, and then it will also look to those for context as to what should be in each section. Now, I have this whole draft. I can now go and look through this. I can go and delete out sections. I can go and make any changes to it. I could continue to have a conversation with the agents as well, saying, actually tweak this. I think we've gone a little bit too low. Can we increase the seniority or experience? And then once I'm happy with it, I can just go to add to job, and it's now pre-populated everything here. Now, obviously, with the intake notes is just an example, that would give way better information and context to the agent to also better tailor this job description for you, but making sure it is public facing. It is not going to do any of the the kind of candidness that you may have in a hiring intake meeting. It is not going to put in here in a public job posting. We also have another couple of small, like little life improvements. So if you just want one section to be drafted with Copilot, you can just click on this on each section, and it will just focus on that. We can make it shorter, longer, check spelling. Basically, making it more succinct, making it more verbose are probably the more useful ones, and it will look at your tone of voice and draft that for you. So that's hiring intake notes, and that is job description generation. I am now going to move on to the MCP. So MCP is kind of the new API cool kid on the block. It's really an API, which I'm sure a lot of people had started to hear about and get their heads around over the last sort of 3 to 5 years. It's really a sort of modern equivalent of an API, but specifically with what are called tools that large language models can understand. They can read their description and they can work out when to use these tools. So to use the MCP, we have a new setting under preferences. And if I just quickly search for MCP, so under AI features, it can be toggled on here. Once it's toggled on, I'm just going to use Claude in the browser just to show you guys how this works. So let me just disconnect this briefly and let me remove this completely. So I'm in Claude. If I go to customize and connectors and I click on add custom connector, I can call this Pinpoint. I'll call it DWE because you can have multiple pinpoints. So you just have to put in what your pinpoint domain is with the subdomain, so DWE in my instance, and just put /MCP. Advanced settings, ignore them, they're redundant for this. If I click add, it's now popped up here, and I can click connect. This will now allow me to authorize as me as I am on Pinpoint. So what this means, this is really important in terms of permissions and visibilities. This adheres to only what I can see and what I can do in Pinpoint. So the MCP cannot go and look, say, at a confidential job I do not have access to, or go and carry out activities that I don't have permission to as well. So if I just now click allow, the quickest way to actually understanding what the MCP now does, and we are updating it pretty much on a weekly basis, is to have a look in Claude or Copilot or wherever, choose your weapon of choice in terms of kind of AI platform. But once it's added, you will be able to see all the tools. So we have read-only tools and write and delete tools. Read-only tools, I pretty much would always give permission to. Write and delete, I would pretty much always needs approval, but I'm going to keep add tasks on because I will just show you how it works very quickly. So if I now just go into a new chat and I go add a new task in Pinpoint to check the job description tomorrow. So now what's happening, this is, I'm actually using Fable 5, so this will probably take hours and it's probably just cost me $20. I should have used Opus. But you can see how quickly it's gone through the tools. It's found a relevant tool called add task, and it is now saying that it has added my task. So if I actually go back into my instance of Pinpoint and I just have a look at my task, I have got check the job description. So that's just a really simple use case, but you can start to do a hell of a lot. And I strongly recommend having a look on the, if I go back, if you have a look in, if you have a look on the actual connector itself and just look at all the tools it's got, it really gives you an understanding of what you can actually do and potential workflows that you could build. So that's it from my side. I will hand you over to Ed.
Thank you very much, Dave. Hello, everybody. Nice to have you with us once again. I'm here for a very brief one today on our onboarding tool. And hopefully, if you use our onboarding tool already, you'll have seen some of this because it's been on the dashboard for a week or so now. But we have added activity as a concept to the onboarding system. And this allows you to see things that are happening across onboarding, agnostic of candidates, and sort of activity things around certain objects like stages being completed or messages being received and so on, allowing you to get a sort of view, a holistic view of what's happening in onboarding, with a few extra things labeled on top so that you can make some use of that. So, for example, if I'm on the dashboard for onboarding now, we have, say, activity as the top things in the dashboard. And I can see the top 3 things that happened on candidates recently. So those are the 3 most recent pieces of activity. So for example, I've got a candidate here who has accepted an offer. So if I click on the detail of this, I can go in and see that the candidate has accepted this particular offer. So I can see what I need to see about that. And then off the back of that, I can choose what actions I want to take next. So for example, I may want to go and view the details of that offer, make sure it was appropriate and what was said, and then go and take more action. And I can do that either by going to the candidate's full profile and going and finding the detail I need to further down, or taking actions from where it's sort of appropriate to go next. Similarly, then we have a candidate below who has completed a stage that now requires review. And so this starts to become a sort of inbox of things I need to have attention on, and then I can mark as done once they are done. So I can say, actually, I've finished with this activity now, I can take this as done and archive that from views. And I'm just sort of trying to get to sort of an inbox 0 of activity that's happened in onboarding. So right now, this is the list of the top 3 things that have happened, and this is across candidates. Below that, though, then we have that across different types of activity. So, for example, we have a messages tab, and so I can see all the messages that have been received from candidates. And again, I can click on the details of those messages, be taken straight to the messages tab of that candidate's profile, and now I can start to respond to that message or do whatever I need to do. Again, I have the context of the candidate's profile nearby in case I need to go and get some additional context before I take any further action. This is the activity feed, and because I pressed on messages there, it's now filtered this down by candidate messages. I can take that filter off and see all the activity across the feed and then start applying my own filters. And then we have lots of things in here like who owns the candidate and so on. So that's very useful. The context I can then change on this is that I can either look at this across all onboarding or filter this down on the dashboard to many different things. So if I choose my filters here, I can go and look at things that are relevant specifically to me as the owner of candidates. So if I'm working in TA ops, for example, I want to go and find all the activity relevant to me and my candidates I own. I can choose to do that here, and then that's now filtering the dashboard to just candidates that I'm responsible for. Similarly though, perhaps Bill is one of my colleagues and he's away for a week. So I want to go and see all of Bill's activity too, so I can respond to his candidates as well. So I can add Bill to that list. Or I can take these off entirely and perhaps look at this across a department or a location if I'm someone managing those people perhaps and want to see what type of activity is happening. As I say, that is allows you to sort of set filters and then see the activity that's relevant to your particular task you're taking care of across onboarding as well. You can configure this as well. If you do or don't want to use this, you can now configure the dashboard to show these things or not, so I can take those things off. And if I do that, I go back to what the onboarding dashboard used to look like. But yeah, otherwise I can put activity feeds on, or perhaps I can have I can reorder them as well, so I can move things around. I can drag and drop those to change the order in the background too, to make it relevant to how I want to see this when I first come into the dashboard every day. So hopefully quite straightforward, but as always, we're happy to take any questions. But yeah, just a super simple one for onboarding, hopefully a useful improvement for those of you who use it. And that is it from me. Cool.
Great. Thanks, Ed, and thanks, Dave. So thanks everybody again for time today, and we'll see you all at next month's webinar in August. Thank you all very much.